Hey everyone, and welcome back to Second Act First Date, episode number 12. Today we're diving into a topic that's probably on your mind if you're listening to this show. How relationships change after you hit the big 4-0. Our source material is a book called Navigating Change, How Relationships Transform Over 40. Which sounds a little dry, I'll admit, but I promise it's got some real gems in there about how we connect with people, romantic partners, friends, family, as we get a little older and hopefully a little wiser.
Hopefully wiser, yes. That's the key question, isn't it? Does experience actually translate into making better choices?
That's where you come in. You can help us break down not just what the book says,
Yeah.
but what it all means for those of us actually living through these changes. So are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
All right, the book starts off by talking about emotional maturity becoming a defining characteristic of relationships after 40. What exactly do they mean by that, and is it always a good thing?
It's a good question. By this point, we've all accumulated a lot of life experience, careers, kids, maybe even a few relationship train wrecks along the way. All of that shapes how we approach relationships now.
So we're talking emotional baggage claims.
Well, it can feel that way sometimes, but it's not all baggage. It's also about increased empathy, patience. We've learned from those past mistakes, or at least we should have.
The book specifically mentions that communication changes. We become more direct about our needs, but also less tolerant of nonsense.
Exactly. We're less afraid to say what we want and walk away from situations that aren't serving us. The book gives an example of a woman in her late 40s who realized she'd spent years in a relationship where her partner consistently dismissed her feelings. After a lot of soul-searching, she finally decided it was time to move on.
Wow, that's a powerful example.
Yeah.
Have you seen similar situations in your work?
All the time. People in their 40s and beyond are often less willing to put up with unhealthy patterns. They've done the work on themselves and know their worth.
So it's not just about expressing our needs more directly. It's also about setting boundaries.
Right, absolutely. We're better at recognizing red flags and not letting people walk all over us.
Okay, but this emotional maturity thing, isn't there a downside? The book mentions that it can make us guarded or overly cautious. Like we're so afraid of repeating past mistakes that we avoid intimacy altogether.
That's a valid point. It's a balancing act, right? We have this wisdom from our past, but it can also make us a bit jaded or cynical. It's important to acknowledge those fears, but not let them paralyze us.
So how do we find that balance? How do we use our past experiences to inform our choices without letting them dictate them?
That's where self-awareness comes in. The book talks about the importance of therapy journaling or even just honest conversations with trusted friends to help us unpack those emotional patterns. We need to understand why we react the way we do in relationships.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not about erasing the past, but about learning from it.
Exactly. And if you're looking for more resources or support, we've got a great community on secondactfirstdatepodcast.com. It's a judgment-free zone where you can connect with other people who are navigating the ups and downs of dating and relationships after 40.
Okay, I'm taking notes. So we talked about emotional baggage and how that plays out. Now let's get to the good stuff. Romantic relationships. The book spends a lot of time talking about how intimacy and communication styles shift after 40.
We're not just looking for surface-level connections anymore.
Right. Think about it when you're younger. It's often about physical attraction, excitement, maybe even a bit of drama. But after 40, there's a deeper level of connection that we crave.
Like we've graduated from Netflix and chill to let's discuss our 5-year plans over a glass of wine.
Maybe not always that serious, but the point is that we're looking for someone who truly gets us intellectually, emotionally, maybe even spiritually. We've got less time for games and superficiality.
The book also talks about how priorities change. It's less about survival and more about fulfillment. What does that mean for choosing a partner after 40? It means we're more selective, more intentional. We're not just looking for someone to fill a void. We're looking for a partner who shares our values, supports our growth, and who we can truly enjoy spending time with.
So forget the checklist. Bring on the compatibility chart.
Well, it's not quite that simple. But it's true that compatibility becomes even more important after 40. We've had enough life experience to know what works for us and what doesn't. And we're not afraid to walk away from situations that don't feel right.
That makes sense. We've learned from those past train wrecks you mentioned earlier. But let's be real, dating after 40 can be tough. The book mentions divorce loss and just the general feeling of been there, done that as major obstacles.
It's true, but those experiences, as challenging as they are, can also make us more resilient and more clear about what we want in a partner. We're less likely to settle for less than we deserve.
It's like, okay, I've learned from my mistakes. I've done the work on myself, and now I'm ready for a relationship that truly lights me up.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we have a lot to offer and that we deserve to be with someone who appreciates us for who we are.
It sounds like dating after 40 is all about intentionality. We're not just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks anymore.
That's a great way to put it. And that intentionality extends to how we approach dating itself. The book talks about the rise of dating apps and how they've changed the game for people over 40.
Okay, let's talk about that. Dating apps can be a minefield even for younger people. What are some of the specific challenges that people over 40 face when it comes to online dating?
Well, for one thing, there's often a learning curve with the technology itself. I've worked with clients who feel completely overwhelmed by the sheer number of apps and the whole swiping culture.
I can imagine. It's like a whole new language you have to learn. And then there's the whole issue of profile pictures. It's got to be a delicate balance between showing yourself off and not looking like you're trying too hard.
Exactly. And then there are the awkward messages, the
Yeah.
ghosting, the catfish. It can be a lot to handle.
The book actually warns against developing a throwaway attitude toward relationships because of these apps. Like we're so used to swiping and discarding that it can be hard to slow down and really connect with someone.
That's a really important point. Technology can be a great tool for meeting people, but it's important to remember that there are real human beings on the other side of those profiles. We need to treat each other with respect and be mindful of the fact that everyone is looking for connection, not just a fleeting distraction.
So how do we use dating apps effectively while still maintaining that sense of human connection? The book offers any advice on that?
It does. It talks about being upfront about what you're looking for in your profile, choosing apps that align with your values, and being selective about who you engage with. It's also important to move conversations offline as soon as you feel comfortable doing so. Meeting for a coffee or a walk in the park can give you a much better sense of someone than endless texting back and forth.
That makes sense. It's about using the technology as a tool to facilitate connection, but not letting it become a substitute for real-life interaction.
Exactly. And it's okay to take breaks from dating apps if you're feeling overwhelmed or burnt out. Focus on other areas of your life, nurture your friendships, and come back to it when you're feeling refreshed and ready to connect.
Speaking of friendships, the book talks about how these relationships become even more important after 40. Why is that?
Well, think about all the changes we're going through at this stage of life. Career shifts, kids leaving the nest, aging parents, maybe even our own health challenges. Our friends become our support system, our sounding board, the people who really get what we're going through.
It's like we're trading in our party crew for a circle of wise women or men who can offer advice, a shoulder to cry on, or just a good laugh when we need it.
That's a great way to put it. And the book emphasizes that quality over quantity becomes increasingly important in our friendships. We're less focused on having a huge social circle and more interested in cultivating deep, meaningful connections with a smaller group of people.
Makes sense. It's hard to maintain those superficial friendships when you're juggling so much in life. You need people you can really rely on.
Absolutely. And those friendships can be a source of incredible strength and resilience as we navigate the challenges of midlife.
The book also talks about the impact of relocation on friendships. Moving to a new city or downsizing can be tough, especially when you're leaving behind close friends.
It's true. But it can also be an opportunity to make new connections. The book encourages people over 40 to be open to meeting new people, whether it's through joining a book club, volunteering, or even just striking up conversations with people in a gym or the dog park.
It's like starting a new chapter in your social life. You're not bound by the same old patterns, and you can be more intentional about the kinds of friendships you want to cultivate.
Exactly. And remember, even if you've moved away, you can still maintain those long-distance friendships. Technology has made it easier than ever to stay connected. Schedule regular phone calls or video chats and make an effort to visit each other when you can.
That's great advice. And if you're looking for more tips on navigating friendships, romantic relationships, and everything in between after 40, be sure to check out secondactfirstdatepodcast.com. We've got a ton of resources, articles, and even a forum where you can connect with other people who are going through the same things.
It's a great community of support and encouragement.
Okay, let's talk about family dynamics. This can be a tricky area, especially as we get older and our roles within the family start to shift. What are some of the common challenges that people face in this area?
Well, one of the biggest is dealing with aging parents. As our parents get older, they may need more help with things like cooking, cleaning, or even personal care. This can be a huge emotional and logistical challenge, especially if you're also juggling a career and your own family.
It's like the sandwich generation, right? You're caught between taking care of your kids and your aging parents.
Exactly. And it can be really tough to find that balance. The book talks about the importance of open communication with your siblings and other family members to make sure everyone is on the same page and sharing the responsibilities.
That makes sense. You don't want to end up feeling resentful or burned out because you're trying to do it all yourself.
Right. And it's also important to remember that your parents are adults and they may have their own ideas about how they want to age. It's important to respect their wishes and involve them in the decision-making process as much as possible.
So it's about finding a balance between honoring their independence and providing support when they need it.
Exactly. And that can be a delicate dance.
The book also talks about navigating the challenges of adult children. They may be moving back home after college, getting married, having kids of their own. It's a whole new set of dynamics to navigate.
It is. And it's important to remember that even though your children are grown, they're still your children. They may need your guidance and support as they navigate their own adult lives.
But at the same time, they need to make their own mistakes and figure things out for themselves.
Right. It's about letting go while still being there for them when they need you.
It sounds like setting boundaries is crucial in all of these family relationships. How do we do that effectively without causing hurt feelings or resentment?
The book suggests having open and honest conversations about everyone's needs and expectations. It's about being clear about what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. It's also important to be flexible and recognize that things may change over time.
So it's not about setting boundaries in stone, but about having a dialogue and adjusting as needed.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that you're not alone in this. Lots of people are navigating similar challenges.
It can be really comforting to know you're not alone in facing these challenges. Speaking of finding comfort, the book has a whole section on self-care and why it becomes even more crucial after 40. We often put so much energy into taking care of others. But what about ourselves?
That's such a critical point. It's easy to get caught up in all the responsibilities of work, family, relationships, and forget that we need to nurture ourselves too.
The book calls self-care non-negotiable at this stage of life. Why is it so important, especially when it comes to relationships?
Well, think about it. If you're constantly running on empty, feeling stressed and depleted, how can you possibly show up as your best self in your relationships?
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
Exactly. Self-care is about filling your own cup so you have something to give to others. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy or expensive. It can be as simple as taking a walk in nature, reading a good book, or taking a long bath.
The book actually gives some specific suggestions. Exercise, mindfulness, therapy. It even mentions hobbies as a form of self-care.
Yes. Hobbies are so important. They give us a chance to tap into our creativity, to learn something new, to just have fun and de-stress.
It's about finding those activities that bring you joy and make you feel alive.
Exactly. And when you feel good about yourself, it shows in your relationships. You're more patient, more understanding, more able to handle conflict effectively.
So it's not selfish to prioritize self-care. It's actually an act of love, both for ourselves and for the people we care about.
Absolutely. And it's an ongoing process, not a destination. There will be times when you're better at self-care than others, and that's okay. The key is to keep coming back to it, to make it a priority in your life.
What are some of the self-care practices that have been most helpful for you personally?
For me, exercise is a must. It's my stress reliever, my mood booster, and it just helps me feel more grounded. I also try to meditate regularly, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
I love that. And I've recently gotten into gardening. It's so therapeutic to get my hands dirty and watch things grow.
That sounds wonderful. It's all about finding what works for you and making it a part of your routine.
Okay, so we've talked about emotional maturity, romantic relationships, friendships, family dynamics, and even the importance of taking care of ourselves. What are some key takeaways from this deep dive into relationships after 40?
Well, I think one of the biggest is that relationships at this stage of life are complex and constantly evolving. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
It's about being intentional, communicative, and setting healthy boundaries, and remembering that it's okay to ask for help when you need it.
Right. And to embrace the journey. There will be ups and downs, challenges and triumphs. But with the right tools and support, we can create relationships that are truly fulfilling and meaningful.
Absolutely. And if you're looking for more resources and support on your journey, be sure to visit secondactfirstdatepodcast.com. We've got a whole community of people over 40 who are navigating the same joys and challenges of dating and relationships.
It's a great place to connect, share stories, ask for advice, and just know that you're not alone.
Before we sign off, I'd like to leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question from the book. What's one small step you can take today to improve a relationship in your life?
It could be sending a text to a friend you haven't spoken to in a while, planning a date night with your partner, or finally setting aside that time for yourself to do something you love.
Whatever it is, make it a priority. Your relationships will thank you for it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into relationships after 40.
We hope you found it helpful and insightful.
Thanks for listening to the Second Act First Date, Over 40 and Awkward podcast.